Before I begin, I want to ask, if you're listening to this with your headphones on, or maybe in the car, could you pause for a moment? Think about the last time someone you loved surprised you. Something so big, it made you question everything. That's what happened to me. When he told me he wanted someone younger, after 25 years of marriage, a part of me froze. I felt my heart slow. I could hear the walls of our home closing in. I looked at him, and for a second, I saw a stranger. The man I thought I knew, the one who held my hand through so many years, didn't seem to recognize me anymore. I remember that morning clearly. The sunlight was gentle through the kitchen window. I was making breakfast, just scrambled eggs and toast, his favorite. And he came in wearing that old blue shirt, the one I used to tease him about. I smiled like every other morning, but this time, my smile felt tight. He didn't say anything at first. He leaned against the counter, watching me. "We need to talk," he said softly. I put down the spatula, my hands still slightly trembling. "Okay," I said, because I always think we can fix things by talking. But I was wrong. What he said next changed everything. "I feel lost," he whispered. "I want someone who reminds me of what I've lost. And then, someone younger." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words were like a cold wind cutting through the warmth of our morning. My husband of 25 years, the man who held me when we were poor, who cried with me when we lost our parents, who promised me that his first priority would always be family, now sounded like he was asking for something I could not give him. My youth. I stood there in the kitchen, my heart heavy. I kept thinking of all the years we spent together, the late nights talking, the small fights, the laughter, the tears. I remembered our wedding day, how I looked into his eyes and believed our love would last forever. I believed it then with all my heart. He sighed, running his fingers through his hair. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I just feel that life is slipping by." I nodded, tears threatening to fall. "I understand," I whispered. But I didn't, not really, because I felt like I was losing him, not because he stopped loving me, but because a part of him wanted something new, something he thought he didn't have. For the next few days, I watched him closely. He changed in ways I couldn't fully name. He became quiet. He stopped asking about work, about my day, about our plans. He seemed distant, lost in a place I couldn't reach. Every time he touched me, it felt like he was testing the warmth. Every time he spoke, I waited for what came next. I wanted to talk to him, to tell him I still loved him, to remind him of who we were. But I was afraid too. Afraid that if I said the wrong thing, he would walk away. Afraid that if I let him go, I would lose not just him, but a lifetime of memories. And so I stayed quiet, because sometimes when the heart is breaking, silence feels like the only safe place. I tried to go about my days as usual, but nothing felt normal anymore. The house felt heavier, quieter, as if it too knew that something had shifted. I would wake up in the mornings expecting to see him smiling over the coffee table. and instead find him sitting in silence, staring out the window, lost in his thoughts. At first, I thought it was just stress from work or maybe fatigue. But the small signs kept coming. The longer pauses, the sighs, the way he avoided my eyes. I remember one evening, I asked him about dinner plans, and he simply said, "I'm not hungry." And that was it. No explanation, no reassurance, just emptiness. I tried to talk to him gently. "Do you want to go for a walk?" I asked one afternoon, hoping the fresh air would help. He shook his head, not even looking at me. I felt the weight of rejection pressing down on my chest. I remember standing there, holding his hand, and feeling it slip through mine, as though it wasn't mine anymore. Days turned into weeks. I noticed how he lingered on his phone more, scrolling endlessly, sometimes laughing quietly at something I couldn't see. He didn't tell me anything, and I didn't ask. I was afraid of what I might discover. But the tension grew like a storm on the horizon, quiet, slow, and unavoidable. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation he thought I wasn't listening to. He was on the phone, speaking softly, but with a tone I had never heard before. I feel alive with her," he said. My heart stopped. Alive? With her? The words cut deeper than I could have imagined. I retreated to the kitchen, trying to appear calm. I poured myself a cup of tea, my hands trembling. My mind raced. How could he say that? After 25 years, all the nights, the sacrifices, the shared dreams, was it nothing? Had our life together meant nothing to him? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the past, the children we raised, the birthdays, the holidays, the quiet moments we shared when no one was watching. And I realized something painful. I was afraid. Afraid not of losing him to death, but of losing him to desire. The next morning, I tried to speak, to reach him. "We can talk," I said softly. He nodded, but didn't respond. It wasn't a conversation. It was a negotiation of emotions neither of us fully understood. Small arguments started to creep in, over nothing really. Who would take the trash out? Who forgot to call a relative? Who left the light on? But underneath those petty frustrations was something much bigger. A silent tension neither of us could name. One day, I found a note tucked under his laptop. It was brief, but it spoke volumes. "I need time to think." My hands shook as I held it. Time to think. About us? About someone else? I felt my chest tighten with a pain I couldn't describe. I tried to maintain normalcy in front of our children. I smiled, I joked, I carried on as if everything were fine. But inside, I was unraveling. Every glance at him, every laugh, every shared memory now carried the weight of fear. Fear that everything we built together was slipping through my fingers. Then came the moment that shattered me entirely. I caught him looking at old photographs, pictures of us on our honeymoon, of our children as babies, of the small moments I had cherished most. But he wasn't smiling. He wasn't laughing. He was tracing the images with his fingers, lost in nostalgia. And then he whispered, almost to himself, "I miss that feeling." I couldn't breathe. I walked over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and he flinched. That tiny reaction broke my heart. "Do you still love me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He didn't look at me. He simply nodded once, almost mechanically. And that's when I realized love was still there, but desire had shifted. His heart wanted excitement, novelty, a spark he thought had died. And here I was, older, seasoned by life, yet still standing in the path of someone he once vowed would be his forever. Days became nights filled with tension. I tried everything: small gestures, reminders of our shared life, tender words. I cooked his favorite meals, played the songs we danced to, reminded him of our anniversaries. And yet, the distance grew. The warmth faded, replaced by a cold politeness, a habit of living together rather than a connection of hearts. I remember one particular evening, sitting across from him at the dinner table. I had made his favorite roast chicken, and I watched him eat slowly, carefully, avoiding my gaze. I asked, "Are you happy?" And he paused. He looked down at his plate, at the food I had prepared with love, and said softly, "I don't know anymore." That simple statement, "I don't know anymore," felt like a verdict. It wasn't hate, it wasn't anger, it was confusion, longing, dissatisfaction, and it broke me in ways I couldn't articulate. I began to question myself. Had I failed him? Had I stopped being interesting? Had our years together somehow made me invisible in his eyes? The more I thought, the heavier the burden grew. But amid the fear, I discovered a strange clarity. I realized that I couldn't change what he wanted, but I could control what I allowed myself to feel. I decided in that quiet moment that I would not beg for his affection. I would not compete with youth or fleeting desires. I would hold on to my dignity, my love, and my memories. And I would wait, not with desperation, but with quiet strength. But waiting is not easy. It's a slow, painful process, like watching the tide retreat and hoping the waves will bring something new. I spent nights reflecting on our life, our children, our home, and the love that had carried us through so much. And in that reflection, I realized something essential. Life is unpredictable, hearts change, but self-respect and inner peace must remain. And so, I continued to live alongside him, with love in my heart, but no illusions. I smiled when I could, spoke when it felt right, and retreated when the silence grew too heavy. Every day was a test of patience, courage, and faith, not in him, but in myself. One evening, everything changed. It started like any other night, the quiet hum of the house, the dim light from the kitchen spilling into the living room, the faint smell of dinner lingering in the air. I was folding laundry when I heard his voice, low and hesitant, calling my name. "I need to talk," he said. There was an unfamiliar tension in his tone. My heart tightened, and for a moment I hesitated. I had learned over the past weeks that these conversations could be dangerous, not physically, but emotionally. They could strip you bare, reveal vulnerabilities you weren't ready to face. I followed him to the living room. He was sitting on the couch, hands clasped together, staring at the floor. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the conflict that had been building quietly between us. "I've been thinking a lot," he began. His voice faltered, and I held my breath. "About us, about everything." I nodded slowly, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and anticipation. He looked up at me then, and for the first time in weeks, our eyes met fully. There was honesty there, raw and unfiltered. I, I met someone, he admitted. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees weaken, my chest constrict. Someone? I whispered, barely able to form the word. Yes, he said, his voice trembling. Someone younger, someone who makes me feel alive in ways I haven't felt in years. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse onto the floor. But instead, I stood still, breathing slowly, trying to summon every ounce of composure I had left. I thought about our 25 years together, every laugh, every tear, every quiet night spent together, and I realized that no matter how much it hurt, I could not let anger consume me. I see, I said softly. My voice was calm, but inside a storm raged. And what do you want from me? He hesitated. I don't know. I didn't want to lie to you anymore. His confession was heavy with guilt, but the damage had already been done. I sat down across from him, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Do you still love me? I asked quietly, the words barely audible. He nodded, but it was a different kind of love, not the fiery passion of youth, not the protective devotion of early marriage. It was love mixed with longing for something he felt was missing. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. I thought about all the times I had tried to reach him, all the nights I had stayed awake wondering if I was enough. And then I realized something crucial. I didn't need to fight for his love. I needed to fight for my peace. I said finally, my voice steady, I can't compete with youth. I won't. I will not beg you to stay or to choose me over someone else. You have your feelings and I have mine, but I am not afraid to stand on my own. He looked at me, eyes wide, clearly taken aback. You're not angry? I shook my head. Anger changes nothing. Hurt changes nothing. But knowing my worth, holding on to it, that changes everything. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, finally, he whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. I know, I said softly, but you did. And now we both have to decide what comes next. That night, I lay awake in our bedroom, thinking about what had just happened. I realized that everything had come to a head, the fear, the uncertainty, the silent tension. It was all out in the open now. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight I had been carrying had been lifted, not by resolution, but by acknowledgement. In the days that followed, we didn't speak much. He kept to his routines, and I kept to mine. But there was a new understanding, a silent truth. We were no longer pretending. The tension that had been choking us both slowly eased, replaced by a quiet, reflective space where we could coexist without pretense. And then came the moment I had been preparing for, though I didn't fully know it until it arrived. One evening, he asked me to sit with him. I want to hear something from you, he said, his voice soft, uncertain. I nodded. What is it? He hesitated, then said, Tell me how you feel. About everything. About me, about us, about me wanting someone else. I took a deep breath. I could have said anger, betrayal, hurt. I could have screamed, cried, begged. But instead, I chose a different path. I looked at him, my heart steady, my voice calm. I feel sad, I said quietly. Sad that our life together has been challenged this way. Sad that you wanted someone else. Sad that we reached this point. But I also feel something else. I feel strength. I feel clarity. I feel peace. And I feel love. Love that is patient. Love that is steady. Love that does not depend on your desire for someone else. He looked at me, speechless. I could see the shock in his eyes, the weight of realization settling over him. He had expected tears, accusations, desperation, but instead he found calmness, dignity, and unwavering strength. I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Just understand that this is who I am. And if you truly want to stay with me, you will. Not because you feel obligated, not because you are afraid of being alone, but because you choose it." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took my hand. Not in a possessive way, not in a demanding way, but as a gesture of acknowledgement, of understanding, of respect. That night, I went to bed feeling a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness, yes, but also relief. Hurt, yes, but also pride. Because I had faced the ultimate test of love and desire and had not lost myself in the process. The turning point had come not with yelling or accusations, not with dramatic confrontations, but with calm acceptance, clear boundaries, and the courage to speak my truth. And in that calm, the tension that had threatened to consume us finally began to dissipate. It was the first step towards something new, not the restoration of our old life, not the erasure of his desires, but the creation of a space where honesty could exist without fear, where love could exist without demand, and where I could exist fully without compromise. And in that quiet, steady moment, I realized the most important truth of all, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is to stay true to yourself, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. In the days that followed, our home felt different, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. The air no longer carried the tension that had shadowed every step, every conversation. Instead, there was a calm, fragile, yes, but unmistakably present. I found myself breathing a little easier, noticing the small details I had ignored before. The way the sunlight hit the kitchen table, the way the curtains swayed gently with the evening breeze, the familiar creak of the wooden floor under my feet. He moved around the house with caution, as though learning how to navigate the space again. Not because it was unfamiliar, but because the rules had changed. We were no longer pretending. We were no longer hiding behind polite smiles or forced conversations. And in that honesty, I began to see him again, not as the man who had hurt me, but as the man who had spent 25 years beside me, who had laughed with me, cried with me, and built a life with me. I started to notice little gestures that I had once taken for granted. The way he made coffee in the morning, just the way I liked it. The way he left notes for me on the kitchen counter. Small reminders that he was thinking of me, that he cared, that despite everything, he still valued our connection. These gestures didn't erase the pain, but they softened it. They reminded me that even after betrayal or desire for something new, there could still be respect, kindness, and affection. We began to talk again, cautiously at first, about simple things, the weather, plans for the weekend, errands that needed doing. But gradually, the conversations deepened. We shared memories from our early years of marriage, the moments that had shaped us, the choices we had made together. We laughed at old mistakes, smiled at the lessons learned, and sometimes, in the quiet, shared the lingering sorrow of what had almost been lost. One afternoon, while sitting in the living room with the sun pouring in through the windows, he turned to me and said softly, I didn't realize how much I had taken for granted." I nodded, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. It's easy to take things for granted, I said, especially the people who are always there, quietly holding everything together. But it's never too late to notice, never too late to choose respect and care over impulse. He looked at me with eyes that held something I hadn't seen in a long time: humility, recognition, and a quiet yearning to make things right. "I want to try," he said. "I don't want to lose us, not like this." I reached for his hand, holding it gently. "I don't want to lose us either, but we have to build it differently now. We can't pretend anymore. We can't ignore what happened, but we can decide how to move forward, honestly and respectfully." From that day on, our interactions changed. There were no grand declarations, no over-the-top gestures of reconciliation, just simple, consistent acts of respect and care. He began to take more interest in my thoughts, my feelings, my daily life, not because he was obligated, but because he chose to be present. I allowed myself to open up again, cautiously, sharing fears and hopes I had buried during the months of tension. We started small traditions, things that created a sense of togetherness without pressure. A cup of tea in the early morning, a quiet walk in the garden, sharing a book or a movie. These moments didn't erase the past, but they created new memories, ones rooted in mutual respect and understanding rather than expectation or desire for novelty. I also spent a lot of time reflecting on myself. I realized that the strength I had discovered during the turning point wasn't just about confronting him or protecting my dignity. It was about knowing who I was, independent of his choices. It was about valuing my own worth, my own presence, and understanding that I didn't need someone else's validation to feel whole. That realization became the cornerstone of my peace. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the world seemed far away, I would think back to that moment. The confession, the shock, the calm words I had chosen to speak. I marveled at how much power there was in stillness, in choosing dignity over anger, clarity over chaos. It was a lesson I had never truly understood until life forced me to confront it. He, too, seemed to learn from the experience. I noticed changes in his behavior that were subtle but meaningful. He listened more carefully, spoke more thoughtfully, and made an effort to show appreciation for the life we had built together. He began to recognize that love was not just about excitement or novelty, but about commitment, understanding, and shared history. There were still moments of tension, of doubt, of old wounds surfacing unexpectedly, but instead of reacting impulsively, we addressed them gently, with honesty and empathy. We learned that relationships don't heal overnight, that trust isn't rebuilt in a day, but that with patience and care, it can grow stronger than before. One rainy afternoon, as we sat together by the window watching droplets slide down the glass, he said softly, "I've learned something important. Love isn't just about passion. It's about respect, care, and choosing each other every day, even when it's hard." I smiled, feeling warmth spread through me. "Yes," I said, "and sometimes it's also about standing firm in your own truth, even when the world challenges you." And in that shared understanding, a sense of calm settled over us. It wasn't perfect. Life rarely is. But it was real, grounded in honesty and mutual respect, and that made all the difference. I began to see the beauty in our life again. Not the perfect fairy tale version I had once imagined, but a genuine, human, resilient version. A life where challenges were faced together, where mistakes were acknowledged, and where love was not dependent on youth or desire, but on choice and commitment. I also realized that my own journey of growth mattered just as much as our relationship. I started pursuing things I had put aside for years, hobbies, interests, and small personal goals. And in doing so, I discovered that independence and self-respect were not threats to love, but complements to it. Over time, the tension in our home faded completely. We found a rhythm that worked for us, a quiet harmony built on honesty, empathy, and careful attention to one another's needs. The past was not forgotten, but it no longer dictated our present. We had transformed pain into clarity and uncertainty into calm presence. Looking back now, I understand that this period of challenge was a turning point, not an ending. It was an opportunity to redefine our relationship, to rebuild trust, and to recognize the enduring power of self-respect. I learned that love can survive honesty, that dignity can coexist with vulnerability, and that true connection is not just about desire, but about mutual understanding and choice. And in that quiet realization, I finally felt a deep sense of peace, not a fleeting happiness, but a lasting calm, the kind that comes from knowing you have faced the most difficult tests of your heart and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. As the months passed, I realized how much had changed, not just in our home, but within myself. The fear, the anger, and the hurt that had once consumed me were no longer the main forces shaping my days. Instead, there was a quiet strength, the kind that comes from facing pain honestly and choosing dignity over despair. I had discovered a resilience I didn't know I possessed, and it gave me a sense of calm I could carry into every interaction. He, too, had changed. Not dramatically, not in ways that were flashy or showy, but in the way he listened, the way he acknowledged my feelings, and the care he put into his daily gestures. It was in the small things, the way he remembered to ask about my day, the gentle way he offered a hand when I needed it, the quiet respect in his tone when we spoke about difficult topics. These acts didn't erase the past, but they showed me that growth and understanding could exist even after mistakes. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset, he turned to me and said softly, "I realize now that love isn't about youth or excitement. It's about patience, understanding, and choosing each other every single day." I nodded, feeling warmth spread through me. "Yes," I said, "love is about presence, honesty, and the courage to face challenges together instead of running from them." We didn't need grand gestures or dramatic promises. Our connection was quiet, steady, and real. It was built on trust, rebuilt carefully, on empathy nurtured over time, and on a shared commitment to honor both our hearts and our history. In reflecting on everything that had happened, I understood that life often tests us in ways we can't predict. It challenges our patience, our self-respect, and our understanding of love. But these challenges also offer an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to build something more meaningful than we ever imagined. I realized that my strength, my dignity, and my voice mattered just as much as love itself. And when love is grounded in respect and honesty, it can endure, even through mistakes and moments of doubt. Now, as I sit quietly in our home, watching the light play across the walls, I feel a sense of peace that is rare and precious. I am grateful for the lessons, even the painful ones, because they brought clarity and understanding. I am grateful for the chance to rebuild, to redefine, and to choose my own happiness while nurturing our shared life. And though life will always have challenges, I know that we are stronger for what we have faced. I have learned that standing firm in one's truth, speaking with honesty, and choosing dignity over anger can transform even the most difficult moments into opportunities for growth and connection. The lesson I carry with me now is simple, yet profound. Love is not just about desire or excitement. True love is about respect, empathy, and the choice to honor each other's hearts, even when life tests us in ways we cannot foresee. And sometimes, the courage to speak calmly, firmly, and from the heart can change everything, leaving even the most shocked or uncertain hearts in awe. And so, we continue, quietly, gently, and with intention. We have learned that love, patience, and honesty are stronger than fear or disappointment. And in that knowledge, there is hope. Hope that life can be tender, relationships can heal, and even after decades, hearts can find a deeper, more enduring connection than they ever imagined possible.